Does this take us back to you, Debbie? The father of the ninth child to die of Strep A. This is the other big health story, of course, at the moment in the UK. Surging outbreak, pays tribute to his 5-year-old princess and says he wished she could have walked out of hospital holding her daddy's hand. Debbie, I don't know what you're going to say here, but I'm seeing quite a number of headlines saying my child died because the doctors didn't respond, or we took the child to the hospital 3 times in a row, and the child was sent out again without any kind of treatment. Is this mostly the result of failure of the health service again?
Well, I just want to. I wanted to pick up on this story because it's also been mentioned in Prime Minister's questions, and Keir Starmer brought it up this time, Director Rishi Sunak. And I see. I think what we need to understand is Strep A, invasive Strep A, which is called IGAS, is very, very rare, really rare. Strep A throats, most parents, I mean, how many of us have had kids that have had a really bad rotten sore throat or tonsillitis, maybe? But this is the condition that they're highlighting here is extremely rare. They say there's been 9 cases since September. But I just want to highlight what Milton Keynes NHS Trust says, because there is a difference between the invasive strep A. Gas is basically a group of strep A, and IGAS is invasive. So Milton Keynes say that while infections like these can be unpleasant, they rarely become serious. When treated with antibiotics, an unwell person with a mild illness like tonsillitis stops being contagious around 24 hours after starting their medication. Further on down, you can see a little piece about invasive group strep A, and this is where it gets much more serious. But I have to just to bring parents back to, you know your child best. You really do. You need to trust your own judgment. I had a child, my youngest son had meningococcal septicemia at 3 weeks old. He became very unwell very, very quickly, floppy, unresponsive, with a very high fever. I knew there was something very, very wrong with him. Most kids with tonsillitis, give them a few ice creams and treat them with maybe a teaspoon. I spoke to Fran Adamson last night, actually, who said any child with a sore throat, spoonful of manuka honey, clove of garlic, a little bit of ginger. If they can wash that down, that'll do a great amount of good. But I also spoke to a GP who said that the criteria for giving out antibiotics, which is the treatment for a strep A, the criteria is pustules in the throat, swollen lymph nodes, a high fever, and the absence of cough. Okay, so we don't need to be blanket giving out antibiotics. However, it would appear that the government have seemed to be recommending that children will be given antibiotics for whatever sore throat, even if the throat swab, which is generally how you diagnose a strep throat, it can take a few days. But they're saying now that, oh well, perhaps we'll just give antibiotics to entire year groups. Maybe we'll just throw them out. Now this is unprecedented. And as we'll see later on in the news, this flies in the face completely of the government's antimicrobial resistance policy. So it's 2 policies working in operation. And what's worrying too is that they're saying that thousands of children could miss school. But one of the reasons that we're seeing strep A could be because of lockdown. However, schools look as though they're going to say, look, if a child hasn't been on antibiotics for a sore throat for 24 hours, they're not welcome in school. We can see that schools are already doing deep cleaning. We can see that the fear factor is being ramped up. And I do understand if a child gets very sick and there is a danger that if it becomes invasive, then they can get very sick very quickly. And in that circumstance, you have to call a doctor. However, we have a problem in this country at the moment, well, globally actually, in that we have a penicillin shortage. Now, traditionally for strep A, a doctor will prescribe antibiotics if they see those criteria, so the pustules in the throat, swollen glands, high fever, etc. Parents will probably have given their children Calpol, infant paracetamol, according to the patient information leaflet inside, because don't forget it's paracetamol. If that child deteriorates, then they get very sick very quickly. But antibiotics are in short supply, and the government has just said they're not in short supply. Don't worry, we've got plenty. However, this is not what we're hearing from pharmacists, and we've been hearing this for quite a while. There's going to be some form of antibiotic shortage. And pharmacists are telling us there are. And if all parents are going to go running to their doctors for antibiotics, honestly, the GP that I spoke to last night said this is unprecedented. But what can we see coming down the line? Is there something more sinister coming down the line? Are we going to be telling parents that there's a vaccination for Strep A? Is that what we're looking at? Are we going to rush something down with the 100-day mission? Or indeed, is this going to be another reason for the government to say your children's immune systems have been compromised during lockup, so therefore you've got to get your children jabbed with COVID-19? Because clearly we can see the drive for the COVID-19 vaccine is still going on. They're still pushing it. So, we have to be mindful of the agenda. We saw it with respiratory syncytial virus, exactly the same, and now we're seeing it with Strep A. So parents need to, your children, and if you're really that worried, then call a doctor. But otherwise, if they're running around and they're complaining of a sore throat and they're able to eat an ice cream, just keep an eye on them, is my advice.